because you know they get too big.
Yeah. But anyway, so my dad started building houses on Z Street in 1939, but my parents were living right next door to Chicano Park, where it's at, where the Bridge Park starts. Their house was right there, across the street from the VFW. They lived there. And my grandparents lived on Irving. My grandmother lived on Newton. So, we were in the core area of Logan until 1939, when my dad started building all the houses in Shelltown. And so we would go, my mother worked at the cannery, so we would stay with my grandmother on Newton. So we knew all the hoodlums and everybody from that side of Logan. But again, it was, the cannery was the thing that bound everybody together, because the cannery would hire your grandmother, your mother. You didn't have to speak English because it was a piecemeal, cleaning the fish and cutting the fish and all that. So everybody and their mother worked there, and their grandmother too. It was a place that was the economic lifeblood of Logan, of the cannery, the salaries of the women. And there was a theater, the Coronet Theater, over there by where the Coronet would be across the street from Cuatamipas. There's a diving shop. It was in that building, the Coronet Theater. But the Coronet Theater would have cannery nights, and they would have raffles for women. They'd raffle dishes and houseware. But that place used to get packed because all the ladies from the cannery, they got like in the movies for half price, and they'd have raffles, and and it was like, and it was a good thing because they recognized that the economic input of women was important to Logan. All the stores that were right there on Logan Avenue, Corona's Furniture, all of that, really were dependent on the women that worked in the cannery, because men didn't get, most of them worked in construction, and it was more towards where the docks are at, the railroads. But the cannery women, they would, it's called Cesar Chavez now, but it used to be Crosby. You come up Crosby, and Crosby feeds into Logan, where all the stores are. So they would get out of the cannery and and buy their shit on the way home. So it was very vital to the neighborhood. And then the Bank of America was on the corner. Dr. Tanaka, the Tanakas were Japanese, and they were the medical clinic for the cannery workers, on top of providing health care for the families in Logan that could afford it. And the Tanakas, Dr. Roy and Dr. Francis, they spoke Spanish. So the cannery ladies would get off work, come up Crosby, go down to Logan Avenue, go to the stores, and then turn down a little side street that goes to National Avenue, and the Tanaka's medical clinic was right there. So it was like it was like a little stream of ants.
Yeah.
But the cannery was very vital, and then the presence of the Navy, 32nd Street, that expanded, and then it started the impetus for what ultimately became the freeway, because the Navy in World War II expanded the access routes to the ships and all of that, so they had to take what was Main Street and reroute those, and the way the way you see it now, where the streets basically they parallel the water, but not right at the water, but a distance off, and that was because the interest downtown wanted to keep that land valuable all the way through San Diego, so the military could use it, the railroad could use it, and so it wouldn't be dominated by all these little Mexicans fishing and all of that, you know. So that was and then when they started doing the alignments for that, they figured that it made a lot of sense, because it started initially as a need for the Navy to access the water and the ships and all of that. So they expanded from the water to there was like a military zone, and then they figured, well, shit, let's go further. The further they went, the closer it started to hit in Little Italy, the small boat owners, the family fisher, small ones. They were in an area, and then the area it ran into where Logan and Imperial was. So they basically were able to come up with an alignment to get rid of the small fishing boats, which is what they wanted, and the blacks and Mexicans at the same time. And that's what they did. Because what they did is they said, okay, this is the alignment of the freeway, but we need rights of way on both sides of the road. So you have the freeway in the middle, but you also have all the right-of-ways.
Right.
Basically, you're taking triple level of land for an alignment that doesn't really require all that, but it was preferable because it made sense with an original plan that was developed in the 20s. It's called the Logan Plan, that basically determined that everything along the water would be either military or industrial uses, and that the movement of people would be, because back then the people that created the railroad and all the buildings on the water, they were white people, and they lived in Logan, and they created a lot of Victorian homes. But this plan conceptualized that they could get rid of all of that, and that people who lived in the Victorian homes, who worked in these industries, could move northward towards Golden Hills, away from Logan. Because at that time, there was also an influx of immigrants coming in after the Mexican Revolution. They were starting to concentrate, because Mexicans back then, they lived by where they worked. So they started to concentrate on those areas that it's not what they wanted. They didn't want them down here by the water. So that's when they came. So ultimately, the alignment of the freeway and the rights of way basically took all that shit out, leveled it, and it didn't matter to them that on one side of Logan Avenue there was Imperial, and the Negro community's business lifeline was there too. They wiped that shit out too. Took it all in one fell swoop. And they didn't really have to do it, because the alignment of the freeway could have been this way. And instead they took the alignment and the rights of way. So they could, And back then, when they did it, I think it was like in 47. There wasn't due process. All you did, you got a letter saying the state is going to buy your property. You got so many days to respond, and if you don't, well, fuck you. You're not. Excuse me, but
Right.
bottom line is nothing you can do about it.
Right.
And then a lot of people, by then, by the late 40s, by then you're talking about now the second or third generation families that have lived on those properties, and so they're like, you know, it's something they wanted to get away from too. So they, so everybody sold because they didn't know any better, you know, and they could have done due process and challenged the alignment, and challenged the rights away, but you know, back then you didn't do it. But so that was originally contemplated in 1920 something, called a Logan Plan, that moved people out of Logan Heights to Golden Hills and created an industrial base along the water, and specifically went after the Mexicans that were basically setting up homes on where Main Street is, where National Steel is, all of that. There was just little, they throw up a tent or little shacks and shit, you know, without any permits. I mean, because their husband worked in the construction, so that's where they lived. And there was, I think the neighborhood house had done a survey, and they determined that the families living adjacent to where the husband worked, there was a high incidence of diseases, and because that, you know, they're just trying to get by. They didn't have water. They, you know, none of that. They made do.
Right.
But they took that as cannon fodder to, yeah, what we really need to do, we need to align the freeway and then get some of that shit out of there. And then they didn't like the in Little Italy, they didn't like the fact that there was a lot of small family fishing boats, because at that time the larger corporate fishing companies were coming in, and those little guys were a bother to them. So it gave them the opportunity to get rid of the poor Italians, the Mexicans, and the blacks.
Well, can you tell me a little bit about your childhood in Logan Heights,
Sure.
like the schools you went to, and your experience?
We went to, well, I started at Balboa kindergarten, and then they changed the boundaries. So from the first grade to the sixth grade, I went to Emerson. And then after Emerson, I went to Memorial for about half a year, and then the coach at St. Jude's, Coach Gingler, he got me. There was another guy, Alfonso Salvatierra. He became a policeman. He went to, but he got us. Well, he offered to get us into St. Jude's to play baseball, and so, you know, I went because I live right down the street, and that was, and my dad liked it because there was some kind of reduction in the tuition. So at the mid-year, because I had gotten in trouble, I was always getting into fights at Memorial, and in the middle of the seventh grade, I went to St. Jude's. Then I stayed at St. Jude's. I graduated there in the eighth grade, and then I went to St. Augustine for a year, but I didn't like it. It was too far, and I was supposed to play baseball, but I didn't realize it, but I got into difficulty with the freshman baseball coach because I got in a fight with his brother or something. Something that did wrong, and the thing was, you'd have to take the bus. You'd take the 11 bus to Horton Plaza, and from Horton Plaza you took another one to North Park, and then from North Park you took another one to front of St. Augustine. And so shit, you know, like, and then the way it was structured, they would make you take an entrance exam to get into St. Augustine. And then they would classify you by how your scores were on the test. 1A, 1B, 1C, 1E, 1F. all the Chicanos that I knew from St. Jude's, from Guadalupe, San Isidro, everybody was in 1E and 1F. And I don't know if you know Ronnie Baza. He went to St. Jude's. Richard Ibarra, John Miller was a class ahead of us, but he was like in 1F too. But anyway, for some reason or other, Ronnie Baza and I got put in 1C. And that was just all the white kids with money. And they were like from Catholic schools that had, you know, a lot of resources. And those kids are put there to succeed. You know, Mexican kids in St. Augustine were just incidental to the process. And Roger Hedgecock's brother Dennis was in our class. I didn't like it. And we had a French teacher who was actually a Frenchman. And then my dad would give me my mom would give me enough money to get on the bus and get home. So my option was to, you know, get on the bus or eat. So, you know, and St. Augustine had they had all these break times structured into the course of the day, and they had like a fucking snack bar. Good shit there, but I never had it. I never had no money. And so, you know, and so, you know, some of my friends there would offer, you want some? And I did, but I could not. So anyway, I didn't like it, and I didn't realize, but the Augustinian order of priests, they have levels, and my dad had a cousin who was in the Augustinian order, and he worked at St. Augustine, but he was a brother. He wasn't a priest. His vocation was to help the priests, and he was the gardener for the school. And so all my friends from St. Jude's and all that were in 1E at Aubrey. Everybody were in 1E and 1F. So I go to the vice principal of the school, Father Brown from Guadalupe, his brother, was vice principal of St. Augustine. So I go see Father Brown and go, Father, I'd like to be put down to 1E or 1F. And I was in 1C. And he just started yelling, "You idiot, you should be proud. You know, if you scored that, you should be, you know." Well, I don't like it. And he goes, "You don't like it? Get the hell out of here." And he threw a ruler at me. I guess I'm not going to be changed down. He tells the story to Brother Nicholas. And Brother Nicholas' grandmother was my dad's aunt. And my dad would go see her all the time. And so Brother Nicholas told his grandmother, his grandmother told my father. My dad got embarrassed because they're laughing at you, and I go, "Well, what?" So when you went in there to ask to be put down with the pendejos, the stupid dummies. And I go, just, you know, it's like, I said, "I don't like it anyways." "Well, you're not going to go next year because I'm not going to pay for that shit." And I never went back. Then we moved to National City, and then I went to Sweetwater. But it was just horrible because, yeah, I felt like a tramp, like, you know. And Baza was from St. Jude's, but he was a real square kid anyway. He didn't. I was just there basically fighting these white guys every day because they give you a hard time, and they came from money. They didn't understand, you know. They didn't understand. "Hey, how come you never buy anything?" Break. Because I ain't got no money, motherfucker. So I'd have to hustle the pennies to be able to get home, or sometimes we'd get rides from people. You know, if I got a ride, then the next day I'm eating. You know. But it was like, and plus, think back then the Catholic Church was more, it was kind of oriented towards the Hedgecocks, the kids that are going to rule one day, you know, and they didn't care about us. And then there was some rich Mexicans from TJ that came there. They treated them like shit, but they took their money. So it wasn't worth all the effort to get there. Aubrey stayed there. They didn't like Aubrey in the beginning, but when he got into music, you know, but still they still treated, they had like levels of Catholic. You know?
Can you share with me a little bit about the culture of music in that area?
Oh God, yes.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. Well, let me start at this. Aubrey's dad worked at North Island, and he had a big old hi-fi, big monster units and everything. And on payday every Friday, and I was trying to remember the name of it, but you know where Huffman's Barbecue is? There used to be a record store next door.
Dean's? Or did it have a different name?
Was it Minifield's?
Oh.
But anyway, so
Okay.
and it's funny because I was just trying to remember the name of it. But anyway, every Friday on payday, Mr. Fay would get a new album. Miles, Bobby Blue Bland, Jimmy Witherspoon, and he'd crank it up on Saturday morning, and because he'd wash his car, and you could just hear it throughout the neighborhood. And my dad would do the same thing, except my dad had like a chicken shit little radio, and he listened to this Radio Ranchito from TJ, and it would start out on an equal basis until Mr. Fay would crank it up, and you know, so that's how we learned about the blues and jazz through Aubrey's father. Then up there by 47th and National, where the Victory Outreach Church is now.
Mm-hmm.
There used to be a little shopping center across the street. There was the produce store, and then there was a little shopping center with the taco shop, and there was a beer joint called the Turtle Inn. It was for older black gentlemen, older black men hung out there, but he would play. He put the jukebox out sometimes, and he would play Bobby Blue Bland. So we grew up. We heard the sound. It was part of our life. Then we heard from Mr. Aubrey's dad. So R&B that's us. That's because that's what we grew up with. So we became accustomed to it. We knew who it was, and pretty soon that's all we listened to.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And then down on, I think maybe at the foot of Market. No. Down where the Arab has that fish store.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
That's Logan, right?
The other side, there used to be a jazz club, Lola Ward's Jazz Club. And as we got older, we would go there. So rhythm and blues, jazz, that was our music. We grew up with that shit. And we had more than Mexican music. It was like, so that's what we grew up with. That's what we were all about. And we would follow, like, Aubrey was in a group called Arlene and the Proteins. And so we would follow wherever Aubrey performed, and so yeah. R&B is us, and that's what we learned because we were from Logan, and then we learned that not everybody followed that or knew that. You know, it was like we grew up with it. So
Yeah.
nothing to us. It's like,
Yeah.
but that's how it started from Aubrey's dad. You know, hey, who is that? Miles. He did Miles Davis. What's his name? The guy that
Oh,
with the horn. Dizzy Gillespie.
Dizzy. Yeah.
All of that. Nina Simone. Aubrey's dad had an
All that.
amazing collection. And he'd crank it up, and pretty soon my dad would like play the Mexican shit because we weren't listening to that anyway. We weren't.
Yeah.
And but yeah, then we started going to that store. I think it was Minifield's or maybe Dean's.
Yeah. But it might have had
The
a
one by
name
St.
before
Regis.
then. There was Dean's, but maybe there was something
Maybe it
before
was
then.
somehow I'm remembering Minifield's.
I'll look it up.
And then
Find it.
the barbecue at Huffman's was right.
Ooh. Okay.
So, yeah,
Yes.
so we grew up doing. Lola Ward had a Jazzville, that's what it was called. It was right there by, I think that new shopping center. I don't know what it is now, but it was in there. And she'd have some great stuff. And then downtown on Broadway, at the foot of 12th and Broadway, there was some kind of like hall up there, but they'd always have Bobby Blue Bland. and then I met through Aubrey. I met Bobby Blue Bland, and I didn't know, and he told me that Sister Pee Wee was his biggest fan. Yeah, I was like, man,
Okay.
you know.
Amazing. Oh my goodness.
So yeah, it did. And then years later, Louis Natividad had a limousine,
Okay.
and he had a contract with the Bacchanal. I don't know if you remember that place.
No.
It was a club up in Kearny Mason, but he would drive. He'd pick up the artists wherever they are. He'd pick them up at the airport, take them to the hotel, and then take them to the Bacchanal, and then go pick them up. But anyway, so I would go with him, and one time he said, yeah, I got to go pick up BB. I go, okay. So it was BB King. Oh man, and we had dinner with him and talked to blows, and it was amazing. It just, you know, and then Louis did BB King, Bobby Blue Bland, and Johnny Hooker. It was like, God, you know.
I heard about Johnny Hooker coming to San Diego.
Yeah, he would.
He has some type of roots here, but I don't know exactly what that is.
Yeah, well, he came quite a bit. And he was real close to Carlos Santana. Who was from Tijuana.
Okay.
Louis knew them too.
Okay.
But it was, no.
So I guess that comes with the Tory Terrica because you build relationships and friendships and all that.
That's what we grew up with. That's what we heard at parties and shit.
Yeah.
You know, like, we didn't know no different. That was our music.
And then the youth, they emulated that by starting their own bands and things like that.
Of course. And everybody could. And actually, at St. Jude's had a hall on the side of the church. And they used to have all the bands there. The Velvetones, Benny Holman, Rosie and the Originals, they all performed those. So we were like, you know, we would see them live.
Yeah. I've seen that documented in I don't know if it was something you shared with me, but it's a book that documents some of that musical history and the schools, the students.
And the Wilkins brothers, Jimmy Wilkins and his other brother, there was a sheriff. That guy was bad. There was some good musicians. They played all over San Diego. There was another singer, Proncel Foster. They all went to San Diego Higher Memorial.
Okay.
But they were great. And then I went to school Leon Petty's, but his dad or somebody was a musician, big time musician.
Okay.
I think it was Leon. I think the dad. Yeah. The one that I went to school with was Leon Petty's Jr. They called him Deanie, but his dad was Afrobo Brigham, his father.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Who else? There was another singer.
Hmm.
But you'd see them, they'd perform
Yeah.
all over. And then, the one that was friends with Aubrey was Big Daddy Rucker. He played around with him. He was good. Yeah, but R&B and all of that, that was what you grew up with.
Yeah.
We didn't know anything else. And we didn't want to know anything else. But it was incredible. And
Is there anything else you want to say? Because I'm going to end this, but maybe race relations,
well, they were community to community. They were non-existent. You stayed in your lane. You didn't. You didn't. Your world was Logan and the surroundings, wherever Chicanos or blacks were at. But as a community, you didn't really interact. And if you did, it was usually around sports, and the neighborhoods, the people, they weren't very positive. They would mess with you. Even if you were kids, they would throw shit at you. They'd call you names. Oh yeah, God. In fact, I remember when we were playing for South Crest. It was the city's 14 and under tournament, and we won. We were South Crest. We became for 14 and under 1960. We were city champs. But when with I don't know if you remember the Garretts, Tommy Garrett, Big Cliff. Everybody, you some real good players. Everybody was at South Crest. But anyway, when we were playing in the championship at Alice Burney Elementary in North Park, and the crowd, the parents of niggers, back they're throwing shit at us. I was like, and nobody said that. Nobody defended us. Nothing. And that day our coach happened to not be there, and so it was you. But you basically stayed in your lane, and if you got out of your lane, you could expect some repercussions depending on what the adult supervision was and what. So that's why matter of fact, and then when we won the city championship, and they had a like a banquet up on 5th at some Masonic Hall, and mind you, this tournament was put on by the San Diego Union and the City Park and Rec Department. But anyway, we were divisional winners, but nobody picked us up. We had to take the bus from South Crest to downtown San Diego. And we were champions, but nobody gave a shit. And it was like, because you were used to that, so you didn't really outwardly look for those things. And if you did, they were like, well, shit, let's get out of here before something happens. But imagine we're city champions, and they didn't send a van for us or nothing, and we had to take the bus, and we had to pay our own
and
bus
this
fare.
was in 1960.
60, yeah.
Wow.
And it was a champions. It was a tournament, 14 and under tournament put on by San Diego Union, and the City of San Diego Park and Recs Department.
Would this be in the newspaper? Did you ever find an article?
Oh yeah, and guess who our coach was? Uvaldo Martinez. Remember the councilman that got into it?
Yeah.
He was our coach.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
So,
Well, I thank you for
No,
this
my
interview, and I mean, I know we could probably go on for days
God,
you
yeah,
have. I mean, you write a book. You
but
know.
it's there.
Yes. Thank
But
you.
the thing is that and I used to talk to Cecil Stepp about this, that our histories through Emerson, through Logan, through Lincoln, to San Diego High, they really parallel each other, and we know and respect each other. You know, and we know, hey, you're doing your thing, we're doing ours, but there'd always be people like, you know, oh, don't be messing with them, you know. And I think it's that common bond of the Boys Club, of Memorial Park, of those commonalities that stay with us even as adults and in public policy and all that. So there's something there.
Yeah.
And then I remember that I think Cecil may have been one of the first students, Cecil Stepp, that got that scholarship from the Negro Women's Society or something, you know, from Memorial and the Boys Club and all of that. I mean, so we all come from that, you know. It's like, however we got there, you know, it's a little mark on all of us, and you know, we recognize the struggle, but also at the same time the independence and elements of success that each of us have in different ways. You know, it's like you scratch the surface with Memorial Boys Club, that, you know, or South Crest or Memorial, or playing at Emerson or Balboa or Ocean View. In fact, Ocean View Park, we used to have some real good games there. Because we play this Emerson and South Crest. We would use the fields to play other schools. And it was always competitive. And those blacks and Mexicans, we would have real good games. You know, real, very competitive. And it was kind of a respect that came out of that. But it's like if we all came through the same turnstile. There's that little bit of the Boys Club, a little bit of Ocean View, a little bit of Emerson, South Crest, you know, Memorial Park. There's always that. There's something that touches us, and I think that stays with us, and that helps us reflect how we look at things. And we may not always share, but you know, in fact, there was what's his name? He used to be a policeman, Johnny Williams.
Johnny Williams.
Johnny and I, okay. Johnny Williams was partners with my cousin, Manuel Smith Suki. But they patrolled Logan Heights. And, you know, Suki kept the Mexican side and Johnny Williams did Imperial, but they both were assigned to the Logan patrol area, and they worked it. It was like, you didn't mess with either one of them.
Right.
That was the point, that, you know, Johnny Williams looked out for people on Imperial, and my cousin Suki had National Avenue, you know, to the water. So it was like, you know, it's that something draws us together, our history.
Yes. Yes. Well, thank you.
No, thank you.
Appreciate it.